Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level in which I have a guest co-host, and together we discuss the interview of the week and suss out a few key topics and help translate them into some specific tactical strategies and advice for you to use to bring your own business to the next level. And before I introduce today's illustrious guest co-host, I want to mention last week's interview. It was of Robert Sherman, and we had Sean Lowe as the guest co-host. Robert is the owner of Washington Talent, an iconic entertainment company. Robert is a guy who is so passionate and committed to what he does, and we hear all about how he has evolved himself and his business, writing almost 4,000 contracts this past year, as well as having quite a dynamic conversation about the idea of finding and forming a new partnership, which is actually with me for Kushner Entertainment. So it was a real fun conversation about partnerships. Today's guest co-host, I'm now so excited to tell you, is Carrie Goldberg, the travel and weddings director at Harpers Bazaar, where she oversees all things bridal, weddings, and travel for Bazaar.com. And she's in charge of content, strategy, and visuals for Bazaar's digital travel and wedding verticals, and editor of Bazaar's new membership subscription program called Bazaar Bride. Carrie, welcome back to this show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had such a good time in New York City last week when we were able to get together. Really had a good time.
Yeah, it was great. It's always great to see you.
Yeah. So this week's guest who we're going to talk about is Micaela ERLANGER, celebrity stylist based out of New York City and LA. She is also the best-selling author of How to Accessorize, a perfect finish to every outfit. Micaela was named one of the most powerful stylists by The Hollywood Reporter. She has styled Constance Wu, Lupita Nyong'o, Jennifer Hudson, Hilary Swank, Blake Lively, Shailene Woodley, and more. She styled Amanda Hearst for her wedding this past year, which she talked about a great deal in the interview. And her work can be seen on some of the biggest red carpets around the globe, and she has been profiled and are featured in top fashion publications and on major TV shows. So, Carrie, we were talking before we hit the record button about how Micaela talked about how she works with a team to create a powerful moment, so it's all about the curation and speaking the same language and how it all needs to align. I thought that was, a key piece of what all of this is about.
Totally. I mean, I think that Micaela and I have spoken about this almost every time we get together, how similar a red carpet moment at the Oscars or at the Globes is to an aisle moment. And that, walking down the aisle is every woman's red carpet moment. And I think that the idea that you could so seamlessly translate the work that goes into creating one of those major fashion moments to your wedding day is a connection that at Bazaar we've encouraged from day one, and I think should be encouraged more in the industry.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for those who didn't have a chance to listen to the interview yet, and I recommend you all listen to the whole thing. There's only so much Carrie and I can get to. But she talked about this through the example of Amanda Hearst's wedding, who she styled this past year, and talked about how the planner was David Mon, and how she and David and the other planner had to first talk about the setting, the time of day, the floral, fabrics, food choices, displays, needed to have a sense of the space, the music, what time does the sun set? And because it all ties back to the images to be collected and how she wants to create a feeling, which can be so much more powerful than even just the photos, which needs to last a lifetime, right? So it's all the mood.
100%. And that's something that I have spoken about over and over again when it comes to what we look for when we're looking for real weddings to publish. This notion of the wedding gown and the beauty moment matching the setting and matching the vibe of the overall space from event to event that translates, from everything from the rehearsal, dinner photography, to the ceremony, to the after party. I mean, my favorite part about Amanda Hearst's wedding looks were that she got married in Hearst Castle. She wore a really regal Oscar de la Renta, traditional gown for the ceremony. It was bridal in every way, shape, and form. It was also sustainable because that worked with her story, which I thought was really cool. And then she did another sustainable couture look by Jean-Baptiste Valli for her after party at Chateau Marmont, which is a totally eclectic venue and not, your traditional castle venue. So the dress had I think it was either roses or hearts all over it. There were red details in the dress. And that again is the perfect dress for that space, that time, that venue. And in regard to the photo moments, Micaela and I also spoke about this. When you have a really long train, you need someone to consistently be laying that out properly in photos, especially something that's a really stiff silk that doesn't flow beautifully like a tulle when it's left to its own devices. It really needs to be managed by a team, which I think is where obviously Micaela and her team come in on the day of, one of many ways they come in. But something like that little caped mini dress that Amanda wore to the after party, it does all the work for you. Like, it looks cute from every angle. It moves really well. And that was Amanda's getaway dress. So she needed something that she could easily walk into frame, walk out of frame, get into her car and drive away. And it would look beautiful in every shot. And I think that that's something that Micaela obviously thought about throughout the selection process and the fitting process.
And what are your thoughts about choosing the shoes and makeup and hair and the timing of this relative to the gown?
I'm of the school where I would assume Micaela would agree with me, that all of the accessories and the beauty should be chosen as much as possible when the garment is in the room. So I know that the whole rule is you're supposed to bring all of your lingerie and your shoes to your first fitting. If your shoes are something old and that you're going to wear them regardless, I mean, by all means, bring that one pair. I often recommend that brides bring options to their first fitting, and in that first fitting, choose the shoe. Obviously, that entails a lot of buy and return, but I think it's the best way to choose the right shoe for the dress and not end up in a weird situation where you just don't feel sure about your decision.
Yeah. Micaela also talked about, I had asked, what is the advice that she would give to planners whose brides are not able to have the luxury of a stylist and have a whole team like this? And she had said that, well, be prepared because what can go wrong will go wrong. What is your opinion about that?
I agree. I also think it's kind of akin to a rain plan. If you don't have a good one, it's going to rain. And if you have a foolproof one, you'll never need it. I think the same thing about a fashion emergency, this notion that some women are very adamant about not changing into a second dress. I think Micaela would agree with me when I say that, like, that should not be an option. You should always have another dress on hand, because this myth that red wine will ever come out of a wedding dress is just that. Like, it's a pure myth. And any stylist who tells you that they can get a red wine stain out of your dress is lying to you, to be totally honest. Having that second option so that you look like the change was planned and thoughtfully architected from moment one is way chicer than walking in with a water stain on your dress from trying to get out red wine. And you also, that way you don't miss your party. But I agree with her that planning for the worst and having plan A, plan B, plan C of what happens when the worst happens just also gives you peace of mind.
Well, and she also talked about having to manage your clients' expectations from the get-go. It seems that there are misunderstandings going into it, don't you think?
Oh my, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that just goes for every vendor, every editor. I mean, to me, that's just a bare bones professional piece of advice, is learning to level set. I think that especially as women in the industry, we're taught that being yes people is the way to be, that you should never say no. I mean, Lynn Easton gave this amazing talk at Engage London about the power of no. And I think that obviously I don't want my default answer to be no to anything. I don't think Micaela does either, but I think level setting what is possible to your client, to a planner, to your vendors is key to a successful event, so everyone feels that they're on the same team. It's definitely something that we do with Real Weddings. People will come to me and say, this needs to be published within 24 hours. And I have to level set in the reverse and say, that I totally understand that you're in a time crunch. If you need this published within 24 hours, I don't have a writer to accomplish that, and I can't accomplish that. So how about this date? How about this time? Could this work for you in the grand scope of what you're dealing with this VIP couple? But yeah, I think that level setting is, especially for women, and I think men have a much easier time doing it than women, unfortunately, or fortunately for them. But I think we definitely need to learn how to manage expectations, especially when it's our job, and it is Micaela's, to always be a yes person.
And, one more topic before we wrap up is also the conversation about how we as industry pros present ourselves at our events. I mean, Carrie, it's amazing what I have seen literally over 1,000 weddings that I've been involved in. I have seen not just photographers and videographers dressed more casual than you would expect at someone's wedding for their client, but even planners. Sometimes I see planners who seem so inappropriately dressed. And Micaela talked about how it's really a balancing act between knowing where you fit in the equation with your client and knowing how to promote your brand in an appropriate way. But it's always about the client.
100%. I also loved that she spoke about knowing when you're the help to dress as such. I mean, I think that there's a fine line between looking like a guest and looking guest adjacent and being able to go up to a guest in a dinner tent and present yourself without being an eyesore in the room. I mean, nothing irks me more than planners or teams that wear branded T-shirts when everyone else is in a black tie. And even cocktail or formal or, I mean, any festive attire, those T-shirts kill me. I agree with you. And I totally get that it's hard to find comfortable workwear, but I definitely think that when it comes to branding yourself and presenting oneself, I mean, the room is full of your future clients. So dressing the part and elevating yourself with what you wear is a powerful thing. I mean, no one should have to search for the wedding planner in the room because everybody looks like an intern.
That's a good point. What do you think about the issue of wearing black? I mean, I know that I tell my own team, because I really, frankly, don't know what else to do. I'll tell them, hey, just be safe, wear black. I think Micaela said it's discreet, it's professional. But at the same time, I don't know. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a toss-up, and it's really based on, the aesthetic of your brand. I tend to agree with Micaela because as, people coming up in the industry, when you worked backstage at a fashion show, there's no other option. I mean, at Vera Wang, you walk in and there is not a person that is not in black. I mean, that is her brand. It also has to do with, especially when you're working an event, you don't want to have your own wardrobe malfunction. So black is really there just in case there is a spill or something does kind of brush against you throughout the course of a long work day. I have no issue with it if it's professional and if it isn't too casual. I think that some might say that it is a bit subservient. And I know Lynn Easton has given me that advice that she thinks that black is a bit subservient on a wedding. I feel strongly that a planner should dictate, not so specifically, but advise vendors on what they would like them to wear. So, if photographers have to wear suits, I really don't see why a planner should get to wear a t-shirt and sneakers.
Right.
But I've often offered when I'm attending a wedding because we're covering it for Bazaar or I'm being asked to style it because we're covering it and the photos need to be a certain way. I'll often say to the planner, should I look like a guest? How about this option? Would a floral print work or would you prefer I be in black? Because I think I always default to what could I stand in the reception in and not be an eyesore? Should I be in the background of a photo? When I worked at Martha Stewart Weddings, that was always what we were told, was that you somehow give off the air of being a guest. So that way, if you need to hold a train and you're in the background of a photo, if you want to hold a signature cocktail for a photograph for the photographer, that it works in the vibe of the wedding.
I'm going to also ask a detail here. As a guy, I'm struggling with this with my team, with the women on the team. We talk about whether to have heels or not. And I've seen planners and teams that look really great. They're in black, but they're wearing flats, during the actual reception. And I understand, or I really don't because I'm a guy, but I would think that wearing heels for hours on end and constantly having to walk all over the place. I mean, what is your feeling about that?
It's a toss-up. I mean, ideally, and I obviously can only speak for myself in this case, I'm in a heel 90% of the time. I think that in an ideal world, if I were attending an event where it wasn't casual, I would be wearing a heel. It's incredibly difficult to be in a heel all day, especially a day as long as a wedding day.
Yeah.
I personally like to have a change with me so I can start the day in flats when I'm not guest facing. And the second I am, I put a heel on.
Yeah. I
think it really depends on whether or not you can move. Because at the end of the day, there's also nothing less elegant than a woman who can't walk in high heels. That is worse to me than flats. So I think do what works for you. I like a bootie just because it's I at least have support.
Yeah. There you go. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I really appreciate you, Carrie, being on the show. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me back. This was so fun.
Yeah, and I want to give the site and way to find Carrie. And Carrie, tell me if you have a different link you'd like to give, but I've got harpersbazaar.com/wedding, right? And your handle on Instagram is at Harpers Bazaar Us. Oh, I'm sorry, Harpers Bazaar US or Carrie Lauren. And then for Micaela, it's micaelaerlanger.com. Her social media handle for Instagram is at Micaela. And on Facebook and Twitter, it's Micaela Erlanger. And all of this is spelled out in the show notes for The Wedding Biz. And be sure to check out the website, theweddingbiz.com. Oh, also, Carrie, you and I are going to be at Engage at Nizuc in Mexico in the Media Lounge.
Yep. I will be there. I'm also doing a breakout, which I found out is not at the same time as Micaela. So I'm very excited because we get to go to each other's.
What is your topic going to be about?
My topic is about takeaways from, I realized that this December marks my 10th year in the business.
Hey, congratulations.
So it's kind of, and ever since I've been in the industry, there's been a lot of media shifts and a lot of just shifts in general in how we define luxury and how media has sort of dictated how we all think. Believe it or not, Instagram wasn't around when I started either.
Me too.
So it's just a bunch of takeaways from the past 10 years that I've been in media in this business.
Well, great. Well, listen, maybe someday we'll have a part 2. You and I will get into some of that.
I'd love it.
Yeah. So everyone, whoever's going to be at Engage, come say hi to Carrie and I in the Media Lounge. And for next week's release, it's going to be kind of different. It's someone from outside of the industry. I wanted to do that on purpose. It is Adam Schubel. He is an Instagram expert who has phenomenal tips and advice. Like, I just listened back to it just to check for any editing points, and it was amazing. So be sure to touch base next week. We want to thank our sponsor of this particular episode, Kushner Entertainment, that you could find at kushnerentertainment.com. And we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.